the audience your background and how you got into sports marketing to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's we all have unique ways that we find into this space, right? And when I was coming out of college, I don't know that I can't say that this is originally where maybe I envisioned myself in 15 years, but I'm so thankful that this is the path that I've been on. Um, coming out of college, I worked in athletics and recreational sports. And that's kind of how I got my start in the world of sports business. And oh, there you are. Hi, Deirdre. Much better. And I started at Stanford Athletic. I had the pleasure to work at Stanford and Cal. So, two rival schools. That was a fun one transitioning. But, it was great to be working on both of those campuses with students. And I had, the fortune to work with a fantastic leader when I was at UC Berkeley, who created a corporate partner program there. And we created really grassroots brand experiences for students and had a great event that we did every year. And that's really what kind of piqued my interest in sort of the world of brand marketing and, in turn, how we leverage sponsorships to support brands and work with partners. And so that was really kind of what piqued my interest, and worked at Cal for a number of years, had a great experience there. And then it was, it's all been a little bit organic. I just had a friend that worked at GMR Marketing, was really curious about the agency space coming out of my work at Cal. And, one day asked if I could do an informational interview just to learn more. And that eventually led to an opportunity at GMR, my work with Visa. I had a friend that recommended this role at T-Mobile to me. So I think, in those experiences of, diving in, getting that experience in one area, staying curious, I think for me has been the opportunity to just continue to kind of learn in the space, but also open new doors, meet new people, that either might be an opportunity for a job, but it also just might be a new perspective to learn from. And so I think that's kind of how my progression has been, really from talking to others and understanding what they do, and then, figuring out where my strengths and opportunities lie to be able to kind of apply that to a new opportunity that might come up. And staying open, I think, has been just a great way to do that. And then getting experience, I think, from all avenues. I was telling someone the other day, and I did an informational discussion with someone, and they asked how I'd gotten some experience, and I gave them an anecdote of, in college when I was first starting out, a friend of mine and I drove about 4 hours each way to Stanford, to Palo Alto, to do work game day operations, and get up at 5 a.m. to go and deliver waters to the locker rooms, and drive coaches around on golf carts, and just really see that game day operation side of things, which I loved. I had actually a blast doing it. And it gave me another perspective on the business, right? And it showed another avenue of what people do in the space. And that was, as a college student, I think that, probably had some part of me later working full-time for Stanford. So I think there's little things like that where it's, any kind of experience or perspective that we can gain, I'm always thankful for that experience, and encourage others to just seek out those opportunities, whether it's big or small. I think there's always something you can learn from different opportunities in the space.
Yeah, I think that's a really good insight. I think too, this is an industry that, young people who are athletic, play sports, or love sports and are just big fans, or go to schools with big athletic programs. A lot of people want to get into the sports industry, and it's hard. It's hard to break in. And, we have at Barstool Sports, we posted an open position for an account management role, and we have 2,000 applicants in a week. So that speaks, I think, volumes, hopefully about us, but also about the marketplace today, about young people coming out of school looking for jobs. That entry level market is hard and difficult right now, and particularly in sports, at a time when there aren't a lot of sports, or sports are not happening the way they have traditionally taken place. So there's probably fewer positions available. So I think one thing that I thought would be interesting to hear from you, because I think there is a perception that, getting into sports is hard. And I think that any experience you can gain, even small opportunistic things, and then leverage any people you meet at those introductions and networking. There is a perception that working in sports as a woman is hard, or harder. And I'm curious to hear your perspective on that, in terms of, has it been hard being a woman working your way up in a sports marketing role? into, you've worked at some really impressive places. Have you found that you've had to do things differently or work harder because you're a woman?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that, I don't know, I don't think that I've ever felt in any company that I was at a disadvantage. I think, though, there's an awareness, certainly, that sometimes I'm the only woman in the room at a meeting, right? And higher up officials, or so higher up leadership in leagues or in any area. There are a lot of times when I think we're the only woman at times. So there's a toughness and armor that you feel like you might have to put on. When we spoke about this last week, right? Like, there's just this sort of inherent toughness you feel like you have to bring to kind of compensate for that. But I think there's an awareness of it, but I also feel like there's a lot of evolution. And I really think, like you were saying at the beginning of this, there's so much evolution in women in this industry that pride themselves on being leaders in this industry. And it's apparent that there is more of an equal weight these days, I think, even than when I started out. And so, there was a moment when I was at Visa, there was 10 of us planning a Super Bowl activation one year, and it was all women around the table. And we kind of went, wow, this is really freaking incredible. Like, this is just really cool that this is the team that's planning, our Super Bowl moment. And so that, I think there is a lot of evolution. There's a ton more equal weight, and it's great to see. I think we need that diversity. It's so important. I mean, everything going on in the world today, diversity and additional perspectives are so important, to how we show up and what we do from a social justice standpoint is incredibly important. So I think that diverse perspective is great to see that there is more of that. Long way to go, but it's great to see that there is a lot more of that, certainly.
Yeah. I mentioned this to you last week. When I started working in sports back in early 2000s at ESPN, it very much was more of a boys club atmosphere. And I think that was not particularly there. I think it was everywhere. Because I saw that, a little bit at Major League Baseball as well in the 30 clubs. But I find now, to your point, I show up to meetings and, our CEO is a woman myself. And, a lot of the folks on my team, we're doing a big push right now for breast cancer awareness. And we were sending an email out to all the women at Barstool Sports yesterday. And it's a powerful group of women. It's impressive. It surprises people. And it's good for us to bring that diversity of, just perspective. And we've been working hard to bring more women and more diversity to our organization. So it's good to hear you say that. I guess one thing I found surprising and didn't realize until I got to this point is, Barstool Sports is the first place I've ever worked where I'm working for a female boss, basically. Yeah. I've always reported to men. And it didn't faze me. I never felt, to your point, like that was unusual or anything like that. But it did strike me when things changed here, that had been my past. So I'm curious, do you feel like you've had female mentors that have helped you kind of pull you up within your career along the way? And are they female mentors, male mentors, or both? How do you think about mentorship?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've had definitely a mix of both. I've always looked, I think, for leaders that, I think later in my career, you realize how important it is to have a good leader that you can work with and learn from. And, I've always looked for leaders that can kind of push me out of my comfort zone a little bit, which has been great. But I think, seeing a lot of female leaders has really, I've always seen strong women. I've worked for strong women at GMR, at Visa, at T-Mobile. All have been amazing contributors to my experience today. I think seeing strong women just gives you that example that you can see. And I once had a boss that told me, they told me how important grit was. We talked about grit last time we spoke, and it took me a long time in my career to understand what that meant for me, the importance for me, and the importance of that passion and that perseverance and bringing that to this industry, which has been male dominated, is so important to be able to maintain. And I think that grit to me is also having a little bit of a thick skin, rolling with it, being flexible, moving forward, having forward momentum, and being able to kind of roll with what comes along the way. I mean, this industry, it's kind of always on, right? So I think seeing leaders that can adapt and, female leaders that have been able to adapt to different areas and that strength, I think, is something I've looked at. And I think also seeing women that, can be examples of balancing things, because that's always a big thing that as a woman, as a new mother, it's something that you look at examples of how can you kind of balance the work and life and blend it together in a way where you can still tackle what you're trying to achieve on the business front, and be present on the home front. And so I think, yeah, there's a lot of leaders. There's also a lot of women that I've had partnered with in organizations like WISE, Women in Sports and Events. And we just started a chapter here in Seattle. So a lot of women that, maybe I didn't work for, but also have been wonderful mentors that I've met, and I can call up if I have a challenge or something I'm working through equally, or celebrate moments with too. And just, they might be in another industry, another brand, but having those women you can connect with that understand the space, that understand the different challenges that we face is a wonderful thing. So I think it's important to have, both leaders that we work for, to your point, but also finding those other women that we can connect with in the industry as well.
Yeah, that's great. I think for anyone that's listening or watching that isn't familiar with WISE, Amy just mentioned a group that has been here in New York for quite some time, and something I've been a part of for years, but I can't remember how many years, but from when I was young in my career, and it's been wonderful. So it's great to hear they're expanding, and I think you're leading up the WISE chapter in Seattle. And I know they are in several major markets, but for anyone who doesn't know, it's Women in Sports and Entertainment. And it's a great networking group. They put on great events around key times of year, bring really impressive speakers, and just provide resources. And they also have a terrific mentoring program, which, I've been on both sides of, where I had a mentor through WISE and also, was a mentee as well to someone in the industry. So it's a great program to get involved with. And to Amy's point, it's a great just network to have, to get, some leadership and some guidance from, and also just kind of hear what other people are doing. And then I also, you've touched on something that we have to touch on here. Amy has an 11-month-old daughter, and given that we're in a shutdown pandemic time in our lives, we talked a little bit about work-life balance, which is always a conversation that people want to hear about when you talk about, women in business, not just women in sports, and how you're doing with that balance. And we're in such an unusual time. So talk a little bit about what it's been like to be working from home, when you were planning to be back in the office right before the quarantine came.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been interesting. There's when I was coming back to work actually in March from maternity leave, and right as we were being told to work from home. So I think I was back in the office and got to see my team for like maybe 2 weeks. It was really not long enough. I missed them all terribly. That was balancing working full time while caring for an infant. We didn't have childcare for about 3 months. So my husband and we had an Excel spreadsheet to keep track of meetings, and we were juggling between meetings and changing diapers and feeding, and like there's all kinds of things that we were trying to figure out at the time. And the great thing is we figured it out. We got through it. Thankfully, we have some childcare back now with everything, which has been wonderful. But it was different. I think the silver lining is just having more time with my daughter and being home. She's going to be a year on Saturday, which is incredible. And being home, I can't imagine having that opportunity, being able to be with her more. So that is wonderful. There's times, you go up, you get lunch and come back down to the office, and certainly the mom guilt kicks in when they cry and they see you for 2 seconds. You're like, but I have to go to this meeting. Like, I'm going to be late, So there's times like that where it's just an interesting dynamic of figuring out how you balance, being present for your family, but also getting your job done. And so, yeah, it's a daily task of just kind of balancing and juggling those things. But certainly, it's staying positive and keeping the attitude of just, it is really a blessing to be with her more. And hopefully we can get back to the office soon to see the team, because we miss them. But in the meantime, we'll enjoy this family time while we have it, certainly.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's great that you see it through a positive lens, and frankly that you have that attitude towards, there are silver linings to kind of what's going on right now from a work-life balance standpoint, although it does feel like work is never off because we're at work and at home at the same time. But my silver linings have been, my sons are 11 and 8. And, as Barstool is pushing hard into emerging new platforms like TikTok and Twitch, I've just been learning through their lens. I watched them watch video games on TV. I watched, I have my son, he asked if he could download TikTok, and I told him only if you give me a TikTok tip of the day. So he shows me something on TikTok every day that maybe I haven't seen before. And it's actually interesting because now they have a grasp on what I do for a living. I don't think they really understood that before. So that's my silver lining from a business standpoint. You mentioned, there's a number of things you mentioned that I wanted to touch on, but one of the things is obviously with everyone being home, and you mentioned earlier, sports is a business that is always on, except this year it wasn't always on. So, as I'd love to shift gears a little bit and talk about your investments in sports platforms. I know right now is really topical because you have some programs going on with Major League Baseball that are super interesting, and really looking at how do you kind of leverage those investments and those properties to engage fans when there are no fans in the stands. You can't be there in the stadiums doing activations and getting close and personal with people and fans in their stands. They didn't happen. The jewel events like the All-Star games this year didn't happen, and everything's just majorly disrupted. But sports are back, and it's been really exciting that even the last 2 weeks, there's so much sports on that almost an overwhelming amount of sports to watch on television. So if we can't go to the games, at least we're like toggling here between the Stanley Cup Finals and Monday Night Football. And so it's exciting. It's like a good feeling, but I think I'd love to hear kind of about what you're doing with Major League Baseball. I know you have a program that's underway right now with Beyond the Bases. It'd be really great to hear kind of how that got off the ground and how that's going.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's this year has certainly been unprecedented, and I think for T-Mobile, we really, it's forced us to think critically about how can we play a unique role in connecting sports fans during this time. And obviously you guys do a phenomenal job with a lot of the content you have, and I think as a brand we're trying to find the way that we can inherently add value to that experience. And we started the spring, there was a lot of back and forth right before we got to the season, so a ton of scenario planning that the team went through. We started the spring with the virtual MLB Draft that our partners at Major League Baseball called us up and said, hey, we need some help. We've got to execute the draft virtually for all of these prospects and figure out how we do that. And this is a new thing for us. So our T-Mobile for Business team was able to step in and provide devices and hotspots and test network connections and make sure that everyone had coverage so that could execute. And so I think that was a great way, and we were really pleased to be able to support our partner in that way. And as we were doing that, I think a lot of the work that was also taking place that we were doing was looking at, okay, when the season starts up, how can we bring fans closer? How can we play a unique role? How does our brand come in and provide value to fans? And we want to show up and add value. It's not for T-Mobile, a lot of how we activate is thinking about, as the end carrier, we think about customers first. So as part of our partnerships, we think about fans first and fan-centric approach, really. And so what's going to give people, more of an experience? And that's had to be very different, obviously, not being in person in the stands. So we kicked off this year's campaign, really rooted in the fact that we want to keep fans connected, even though they can't be there. So we provided, for the 5th year in a row, we provided MLB TV free, which was great. Saw a huge success in giving fans another way to watch their teams this season. We've also added another subscription to The Athletic to keep fans connected, and added some offerings to allow fans just to view content in different ways during this time. And then most recently, we created, as you mentioned, the Beyond the Bases program. And this is a virtual content series that comes out every week. We just had an episode this week with Luke Voigt. We spoke to Didi Gregorius last week. Pete Alonso helped kick us off. We've got a number of additional episodes coming up. It's actually going to continue past the World Series. We've got some more content through November that we'll be bringing to give people kind of that behind the scenes look at players and hear from them. And I mean, it ranges from everything on, how they got into the sport, but it also talks about things like, what is Luke Voigt's favorite pizza? So we're just getting kind of unique and fun content to keep fans connected and give them another view It's usually, you know, we have previously done a lot in our local markets, and as part of T-Mobile's coverage map growing and our network growing, which we're incredibly, you know, proud of, we've been able to look at localizing a lot of our assets with our T-Mobile teams that we support. And, you know, this was part of, okay, how do we take that same approach, but make it in a digital fashion and offer local fans the opportunity to connect with players where we maybe normally would have done a player appearance. But what I love about this is it lets fans anywhere, you know, able to log in and view the content and learn about these players and hear from them in a really intimate fashion, which is a lot of fun. And then we also are able to support our Little League platform with that. So, you know, a lot of unique ways that we were able to sort of shift our approach that I think are actually going to continue for a long time for us, and kind of look at a unique way in going forward, you know, now that we've tried some different things.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, a lot of the folks like yourself that I've talked to, like a lot of these tactics that people have found success in while they've had to find new ways to engage consumers, a lot of them have been so successful that I anticipate they'll continue doing those and get back to doing physical activation. So, you know, experience is coming back. When you can give people physical experiences and be in person, you will, I'm sure. But then also envision this content series being something you guys just continue to build upon and have it, you know, be ongoing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing too is like your product, you know, it's interesting. We balance this a little bit. Right now we have a show, our pro football show with Deion Sanders and Dave and Big Cat. And the sponsors of the show are Pepsi and Rocket Mortgage. And you know, one of the things that we were trying to create is like parody of the branding on the set. And it's a lot easier to put a Pepsi can in front of people on set than it is to find, you know, authentic and organic ways to integrate a brand that is not physically able to be seen and put on the desk. And so it sounds like you do it through experiences and leveraging, you know, the assets that you get through your partners to create unique experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a good point. I mean, there's certainly, when I was at Visa, it was the same thing. You have this, you know, payment services and a network connection are not things that you can physically put somewhere necessarily, right? And so the experiential piece becomes so important, of a tie to give fans that experience that, you know, we have to get really creative at ways to do that. And I think connectivity obviously is, you know, really right now it's something that, you know, T-Mobile is playing a huge role, and we're doing it, you know, across the board for education. There's a number of things going on that our company is doing as well. So I think there's just really leaning into where our company can play a role and help people during this time as well. While it's not that front and center product, and there is that background connectivity that's playing a huge role in people's lives right now. So definitely something that, you know, we're mindful of and try to support any way we can.
So, Amy, it's October 1st. Baseball's obviously in full swing, and the World Series is right around the corner. Is there anything you can share with us about what T-Mobile will be doing around this year's World Series?
Yeah, I mean, first off, we were thrilled to be having a World Series this year. It was a little questionable for a while. We weren't sure what was going to happen for the world of sports, and now, yeah, to your point, there's NBA Finals, there's Stanley Cup, there's, you know, there's postseason, there's a lot going on. So we're thrilled to be here. You know, with our partners in Major League Baseball. We do have some things in the works. It's definitely going to be a moment of celebration. I think we're looking at it postseason as a way to you know, make an impact for the brand, but also for the community. And so I can't say too much, you know, other than we're hoping to bring an uplifting story and an opportunity for fans to get involved in supporting youth sports participants across the country. And you know, that's all I can say for now. But I think within youth sports, there's a lot of struggles out there for a lot of families. With everything going on, and we really want to look at how we can support in a bigger way and you know, allow kids to keep playing. So we'll leave it at that, but more to come next week. You know, keep an eye out, and we'll be sure to share more. I'm sure you'll see the updates, but we're really looking forward to getting kicked off with everything for our postseason campaign after the wild card series.
Cool. Well, shout out to my friends at MLB. I used to work at MLB Advanced. I know that whole crew pretty well, and Bill Morningstar, he lives here in my town, but sounds like they've done a nice job working on your behalf to come up with activations and things that allow you to, still be very active within, baseball and with fans during a time that's been unprecedentedly difficult.
Yeah.
And I know everyone I talk to is either figuring it out or struggling with it. And there's been, things that have really worked, and there's been some failures along the way too. So great to hear. I think one of the things that's really interesting about what you're doing at T-Mobile is you have this platform with Major League Baseball that is, massive, big three sport in the United States of America. And then you have this emerging platform that you guys have kind of dove into in esports. And I just thought it would be interesting to hear kind of how you think about esports, what you guys are doing in that world, and how it's either thriving and evolving right now, given it's definitely esports has been having a moment since everybody's been kind of locked down.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been an incredible space to be part of, and we started a number of years ago in the esports space. When we entered and partnered with Overwatch League as part of their inaugural season. We just renewed with them for another 3 years, and so they've got I think they had to pivot this year too, right? I mean, them and Call of Duty. So Call of Duty League, we just recently supported that as a start of a season as well with our Metro brand, which we're really excited about. And they great platform. I think they had one event in an arena, and then everything got shut down and they had to go digital. And I think kudos to them, where a lot of the sport does lend itself to be viewed digitally, viewed through platforms like Twitch and YouTube. But they still competed in person. They still had a lot of infrastructure where they were competing in person. And I think they've done a fantastic job of shifting their competition to be online. And I think Kristen Connolly of Overwatch is speaking later today, and can't wait to hear her speak as well. I think that they've done a good job of just pivoting sort of how they had their competition schedule and moved things digitally. We've tried to, just like in Major League Baseball, we've tried to come alongside that and support fans in another way by giving them ways to connect digitally with players, or bringing, opportunities for fans to be heard with fan voice awards and Call of Duty, and the MVP that we've always supported with Overwatch League. So I think there's ways we're trying to get fans involved. But yeah, I think it's probably been, a tough space for them as well, but also an opportunity where they were live with live sports when a lot of other live sports weren't live, weren't happening. They were able to continue competition, in the spring, where a lot of others weren't. So I think they had to pivot quickly as well, but they did a nice job. And I think, esports it's an inherently fragmented space. There's a ton of really great teams and influencers and streamers out there. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. We've been, very thankful with our, partners at Activision Blizzard on these two really quality leagues that we're working with now, and certainly looking forward to doing more in the space to showcase technology and what network technology can do, within the world of gaming.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. I know from our household here, we had to upgrade all of our, systems and Wi-Fi, because in addition to working from home, having two, adults working from home full time most days of the week, I've got, Fortnite stream going on,
Yeah.
YouTube stream going on in the other, and it's just been crazy how much the networks have been able to support. I think, if we'd had a pandemic 5 years ago without, the 5G networks place, I don't know that it would have gone as smoothly as it's going right now for a lot of people, in terms of being able to have this connectivity, being able to do these virtual events, or being able to do your Beyond the Base program with fans.
Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about, Sprint and T-Mobile merged not that long ago, and I imagine that's had an impact on, your team and how you guys go to market with, the two brands, and how has that impacted you and your team and what you're doing with the Sprint and T-Mobile brands?
Yeah, it's an incredible milestone for the company. So, in our brand, our coverage footprint is stronger than ever now with the two brands coming together, and we've now grown to number 2 in the wireless space, which is really exciting. So it's a big moment for everyone to be able to celebrate, and look at how do we then continue to drive awareness of the network in new air territories. So as T-Mobile's coverage footprint grows, and we can, we've got nationwide 5G network, how do we make sure that more customers know about T-Mobile and know about the opportunity. And I think it just allows us to extend our portfolio into new territories where we know our coverage is stronger than ever with this merger. And so I think that's the opportunity we've have it in front of us, that we're looking at for the upcoming year. It's also, part of looking at how do we look at the Sprint portfolio of properties that they had to support Kansas City with the Chiefs, an amazing team, and the T-Mobile Center, formerly Sprint Center. So a lot of work, going on to look at how do we apply this sort of uncarrier mindset of supporting fans with big events and things that we've done in the space, and sort of applying that to these new properties and really supporting our second HQ community. We now view Kansas City like we view the Seattle area. It's our hometown, and we're really looking forward to bringing more magenta and supporting it in a bigger way with these partners, with the Royals and the Chiefs and T-Mobile Center. So we're excited to get, the Chiefs have been open and allowing fans back in, which sounds like it's been going great. And, we're looking forward to opening up T-Mobile Center at some point, hopefully in the future, once we can do that safely, and, work with the Royals. So I think all of the teams have been fantastic, and we're excited to bring them into the T-Mobile family.
Yeah, what two amazing sports cities for
yes. Seattle and Kansas City, I would say both are, fantastic homes for sports fans, that's for sure.
Yeah. And even just the fake crowd noise they've been pumping into the Fox games is just,
I know. Well, they've got to hold up the interesting piece is that I think Kansas City and the Seattle Seahawks both have competed back and forth for the loudest stadium. And so we've been discussing that we need to have an employee battle on loudest stadium within the NFL between those two, and we get fans back. So it's great.
Awesome. That's really cool. Well, I do want to open it up to the audience. Looks like we have quite a good audience here for Q&A. I think if you are in the audience and you have questions, I think you can just post them here in the chat, and I should be able to see them. So you can go ahead and do that. Oh, I see there are actually a number of questions. So I'll look through these, but before I do that, I was going to ask you, Amy, we talked about it, like from your perspective, there probably are a lot of kind of young professionals tuning in. Is there, a single piece of advice or any advice that you would give someone that's kind of starting out or earlier in their career, that would help them kind of achieve the success that you've been able to have?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I was once told that as women, we look at a job description and we look at it and we say, oh, I've got to check every box and I have to have everything before I take this role. And it struck me because I was like, wow, I think I probably have a tendency to do that, versus looking at it and saying, wow, I've got all these strengths that I could apply to this new role and new opportunity, and maybe taking a leap of faith on ourselves or taking that stretch opportunity. And so I think, as women, we can sometimes carry a little bit of that self-doubt in a male-dominated industry. It just naturally can occur at times. And so I think if anything, I would just encourage, others to, I would turn anyone in the industry to really stretch, expand, don't feel like you have to check every single box, look for where you do have strengths that you think you could apply to a new opportunity, and the perspective that you would bring to look at where, you could maybe grow into that role. When I took this role, I was very excited to bring a lot of the experience that I had from Visa, but there are always going to be things that we're all still learning every day, on an ongoing basis. And so there were still things that I had to probably lean on my team and we had to learn with just as much as I had the strengths on the other side. So I think we're never, going into it, we should always be learning. And so I would just encourage people, and other women to make sure you don't feel like you have to check every box, that you look at those opportunities, because that's where the real learning happens. And that's where we really, really grow. So have some faith in yourself and, go for those opportunities, big and small, they all add up. Definitely something to think about when you're looking for your next opportunity out there.
Awesome. So there's some great questions in here. I think one that you would probably have some insight or thoughts on, having worked at such major brands like Visa and T-Mobile. There's a question from the audience asking, how do some of the more established older brands gracefully enter some of the new technology spaces like TikTok and esports without sacrificing their brand identity or being inauthentic. And I know that is a challenge because these new platforms, if you don't do it authentically, it can come off as very forced.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a great question, and it's something that we ask ourselves every time we're looking at new opportunities. I think I talked earlier about us adding value to fan experiences. And as we look at new opportunities, we're always looking for, there's got to be a real role or a reason for us to be in a space or a way that we're bringing value to that partner. Because to your point, otherwise it can feel forced and it can feel inauthentic. And so when we enter a partnership, we're not slapping a logo and walking away. It's really about a conscious choice of why we're in that space or in that community to support them. And so that's definitely a lens that we take every day when we look at new partnerships or activation. That's definitely something that we look at. And I think it comes from figuring out who you are as a brand, really getting, your filters from a partnership perspective, really crystal clear, and then sticking to those as you're evaluating new opportunities that might come through. I would say that we were just having a conversation earlier this week about a partnership and had some good dialogue and debate about, that and how does it fit and does it make sense? So I think these are some things that you're constantly pressure testing, but it starts with a clear set of sort of vision and goals and what partnerships are going to do for the brand, and then what you're inherently also going to do for that partner and that fan base. So all things, to consider when looking at partnerships for a big brand or, any partnership for that matter.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I think the other thing I would add is maybe finding the people within your company or organization that are truly fans of that particular platform, league, team it is that you're looking to get into, really it. For us, as we entered in a very, very big way, the esports world during the pandemic. Our creators and our talent just went there and started creating content. But from how do we integrate our brand partners into that, we really sat down with the people at Barstool who are the gamers, are in the streams all the time. We actually saw one of our partners, Cash App, who are the presenting sponsor of Pardon My Take. They were entering the stream and gifting subs to fans at like 50 at a time, and then all of the fans in the room were celebrating Cash App, and there was like these Cash App moments that were being created. And when we talk to them, it's like they have a person on their team who's just a huge gamer, and came up with ways to kind of surprise and delight fans that were really authentic and he knew would take hold, versus again, we can put their logo there. We do it. They're in the studio that they're playing games in anyway, but it's just an interesting way to kind of look at from a platform perspective. You can't take what you're doing from one place and just apply it to another, because the way these fans are using these platforms varies greatly from platform to platform.
So important. And we've got individuals on my team too that have, definitely appreciate, everyone has their expertise and their lens that they bring, and people have that good debate and dialogue of like what makes sense for this fan base or not. So I think that's a great point on having folks that are there and can really make sure it's going to resonate with the fan base they're in front of.
Yeah. The other questions here, there's a lot of questions here about just like from a career perspective, here's one. I guess some of the folks here are thinking about like, what is a path forward for you? I imagine you'll be at T-Mobile for years to come, but when you talk about those stretch goals, like what are your goals from a career perspective to kind of stretch yourself beyond what you've currently accomplished?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's funny. I know people have definitely asked like what my 5 and 10 year vision looks like. I'm like, I don't know that I have that, I'm not sure that I have a 10-year view. I think for me, I look at the space on just continuing to evolve on both the content and sort of how we're using partnerships as well. And I think for me, I probably personal goal is to look at, more properties outside of, both within the sports space, but also even beyond the sports space, and, beyond, looking at new territories of partnerships and different consumer passion points, looking at how we use those, and looking at different parts of the business. And, we're definitely looking at different ways, we can expand out to other lines of business. So I think it's about evolution. I don't know that I have a set, here's where I want to be in 10 years kind of goal. I think for me, it's about staying curious, learning, evolving our approach. Obviously an opportunity to sort of just expand scope, because that brings learning and new opportunities. But I've always taken a bit of an organic approach, and I feel like that curiosity certainly leads to new opportunities. And that's kind of what I carry with me, onward.
Yeah, that's great. I think for me too, like I don't see the world in 10 years ahead.
Yeah. What's your 5-year goal, Deirdre? I want to hear.
Stay alive, keep my head on straight.
Yeah. Keep the family rolling forward, and
for my kids. That's one. Make sure that they're sane. No, but I think it is to continue to push and evolve and grow, while also creating that life balance. That's important to me.
Yeah.
I think that one of the things that's been almost a fortunate factor of having come to Barstool Sports, like if you look back, I've been in sports a long time, and you could argue that's a comfort zone. I really just felt like I was, as a career, building a lot of equity, staying in that kind of lane. Coming to Barstool was a natural next step, but what I didn't anticipate was how fast Barstool would evolve beyond sports properties. So our core sports properties are there and they're thriving. We launched the Barstool Sportsbook. That's going to be a rocket ship, but we also have been launching female and lifestyle brands as well that have kind of helped expand. You mentioned curiosity and looking outside at new consumer passion points. We're now working with brands that are looking to reach young women, or brands that want to reach guys and girls through a lens of entertainment, esports, and other ways beyond just your traditional sports. And even expanding internationally a little bit is probably an exciting next step for me, hopefully, and also Barstool Sports. So those would be my answers to the questions that we have here. So I think that's covers it all. I think the questions I see here from the rest we've kind of already touched on, but it's great to connect, Amy. It's been a really great discussion. I really appreciate all the time and getting to know you, and I'm sure that the rest of the day will be filled with a lot of really insightful stuff. There's definitely some great panelists here, so thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for chatting. Looking forward to seeing everyone over the next couple hours as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. I loved what you were saying earlier about just the importance of having grit and perseverance, especially, in 2020. So thank you guys so much. It was so lovely to have a great kickoff session. And we hope to have you on our stage again soon.
All right. Thanks, Emily. Bye, Deirdre.
Bye, guys.
Have a good day.
Well, we have an amazing packed out day with lots of great sessions featuring our women in sports. So we'll move right on to the next session. We're going to be joined by Gabrielle Dao. Gabrielle is the VP of Marketing for